Stafford now. Look at this Rams schedule. Buccaneers, my guess is it's on Fox, America's Game of the Week. Arizona, Fox, Amazon, 5:20, Game of the Week. Seahawks, Fox, that'll end up being America's Game of the Week, I would imagine. At Baltimore, San Francisco. Those are 10 national TV games for Matt Stafford. This is very Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was great. We didn't talk about him for 10 years in Minnesota. He goes to Boston. He was the most discussed big in the game for 5 years. Every playoff game, we were all glued on that Doc Rivers, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. Kevin had always been great. But he ended up in Minnesota. And that's where I feel for pro athletes. I know, they're all rich, blah, blah, blah. But God, some guys get breaks. I mean, Dak, I love him, but he inherited 3 Hall of Famers on the offensive line in their prime and Zeke. And a coach who'd been a quarterback. And by the way, an owner who loves offensive players. Jerry loves offense. I'll get him more weapons. Matt Stafford goes to Detroit, and they can't, nothing works. Defensive coach, bad O-line, no running game. Matt Stafford's talented, but good God, he gets a culture upgrade, a coach upgrade, an O-line upgrade, a receiver upgrade, Cam Akers, a running back upgrade. Now, the division's tougher, but you take that. I'm not an MVP guy. I hate talking about that. But not only will Matt be good, the story's good. I'm not a big believer in you deserve stuff. You got to earn it. Kevin Garnett had earned the right to be on a notable franchise. Matt Stafford's earned the right. He got a nothing sandwich, and I think he's going to have a terrific year. Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card into your first year automatically. No limits. Discover.com/yes. Get used to hearing yes. So I saw this story. You know, D. Wade now is part owner of the Utah Jazz. Kind of a smart move by the organization. Let's let D. Wade come in here because, you know, there's always been this theory that, you know, a lot of stars don't like to play in Utah, and I've always kind of rolled my eyes at it. Utah's like Gonzaga basketball. They've been good forever, and they've been damn close to winning. If there's no Michael Jordan, the Utah Jazz have 2 championships. They gave Jordan fits. I watched those series. You watch those series. Michael had some of his worst playoff games against Utah. Those games were wars. Those were battles. Without Michael, you got 2 of them. Don't kid yourself. Here's the other thing. Karl Malone liked playing there. Stockton did. Clarkson does. Donovan appears to. T. Bailey did. Brian Russell did. Jerry Sloan liked coaching there. So is Quinn Snyder. Coaching matters. Coaches like coaching there. Players matter. Their stars like playing there. So when I hear like Donovan Mitchell may not be happy there, that's a rumor, I think, with timeout. Don't tell me people don't like playing in Utah. You know where players don't like playing? Cleveland. LeBron is from there and is like, get me out of here twice. Washington, D.C. When's the last time the Wizards were relevant? The 70s? I watched those series against the Sonics and Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld and Phil Chenier. I mean, like, where are all the players going to Washington? How about New York? 1 playoff series win since 2000. I keep hearing about all these guys that want to play in New York. Where are they? Julius Randle's a big get. All right. Here's something to remember. Now, in pro sports, the way pro sports are built, they're trying to create, except baseball with no salary cap, but NBA, NHL, NFL, they have salary caps. They're trying to keep it even. If you're good, you draft last in the first round, right? College sports are different. The better you are, the more you dominate recruiting. So college is built for dynasties, built for big brands. There's no salary cap there, right? So just think of how hard it is to win. And Utah's been this close twice. No MJ, they got 2 titles, this close. So think in college sports how good Kansas basketball is. The guy who invented basketball is from Kansas. So they had a little head start on everybody else. He invented it, James Naismith. They had Wilt. They have nothing but 4 and 5-star athletes. They have one of the best coaches, Bill Self, in college basketball. Before him, Roy Williams. Those are two of the top 5 coaches last 20 years, arguably, right? 30 years, 1 title. 1, Kansas. They invented the sport. 1, Texas football. When you think Texas, I think football. Texas has an unbelievable brand. You ever fly into Dallas and you get to 10,000 feet, down to 5,000 feet, and you're getting ready to go into Dallas-Fort Worth Airport? You ever do that at night and you see the high school football stadiums, 8 of them, they're all like 30,000 people? It's like no other state's like that. The state school in Texas, Texas football, 40 years, 1 title. And it was like a last play of the game thing with USC. They came this close to losing it at the Rose Bowl. Kansas, basketball, Texas football, 2 titles, 70 years combined. One sport invented their sport. The other one feels like they did. And that's college sports, where dynasties happen. Utah's well-run, exceptionally well-run. For years, it was exceptionally well-owned. Great coaches, great scouting, great players. I want to hear about, nobody really wants to play in Utah. Nobody wants to play in Cleveland. LeBron asked Chris Bosh, would you come here? Bosh is like, I'm not coming. Can you imagine that, LeBron in his prime? You pick the phone up, you're Chris Bosh. You're playing in Canada. Ring. Hello, it's Chris Bosh. Hi, it's LeBron James, the world's greatest basketball player. Would you like to come play with me? Love to. Where? Cleveland. Click. Nobody wants to play in Cleveland. I want to hear about Utah. The coaches like it. The stars like it. By the way, I kept hearing Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell don't get along. I don't know. They were number 1 seed. Seemed to get along fine to me. Donovan Mitchell's fine. Utah's fine. They're Gonzaga. You can't be that well-run for 100 years or however long. Gonzaga's been well-run in Utah. They'll break through. But it's sort of like what, when Michael ran the league, Houston didn't do anything until Michael played baseball for a couple of years. Then Houston did stuff. If you're well-run, if you're smart in life, if you make good decisions, you'll break through. Just be patient. It's all masonry, man. Just lay the bricks, one after one. You'll break through. Joy with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, DeMarcus Cousins has worked through numerous injuries over the last few seasons that have sort of derailed his career. He said he felt like no one wanted to give him a chance and that everyone was questioning his ability to play at a high level. But he believes that a title would change the narrative surrounding him. He told the Undefeated, winning a championship would be the ultimate redemption. It would be a middle finger to everybody, and you know where I am going to wear the ring. He had a big night, career playoff high in Game 5, 15 points, 2 rebounds,
he played
3
well.
assists. He did. Listen, I'm not going to tell Boogie how to feel. It's discouraging when people don't want you and you feel like you still have potential and stuff to offer. But he did have a lot of injuries, and one of them was Achilles, and we know how hard that is to come back from. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that it's unfair that people were skeptical of if he was going to be able to play consistently at a high level. But you don't need to necessarily be the guy that's putting up big numbers every single night on a championship team. If you play a specific role on a championship team, that has extreme value.
If he ends his career, DeMarcus Cousins ends his career with a title and those points, and he made a lot of money. He'll have a title. He played a lot of years. That is better than 98% of the players in this league. If you take out the top 30, 40 players ever, take those guys out, top 50 players ever, make it an easy number to remember. And I said, yeah, he ended up with $100 million. He won a title and played for 17 years. You'd be like, yeah, I'll take that. That is, by the way, that is a better than average career.
That's an amazing career. I think we get a little too crazy with what everybody is supposed to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right? And we were talking a lot about this yesterday. What's the difference between the greatest in the game and great and good? Like there are just that little extra stuff that separates you. You can still have an incredible career and not have 3 or 4 championships and go down as the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
I think Boogie's had a great career. He's just had a lot of injuries.
Yep.
And when you are a player that has multiple injuries back to back, or you're suffering from really extreme injuries like an Achilles injuries, people are going to be hesitant about giving you, first of all, a lot of guaranteed money.
Yeah.
And putting you in a situation where they have to rely on you every night. And I don't think that that's unfair, especially as you get further and further in your career. When you're a younger player, then you know you're going to bounce back and you have years to, develop and whatever. But I just think it's funny he's going to get his ring made if he has one for his middle finger. It's a move. So Dennis Schroeder is one of the Lakers' big free agents this offseason. He reportedly turned down a 4-year, $84 million extension with the team earlier this year. In his exit interviews, he denied that money was the reason why he turned it down and reiterated he wants to be in LA. But in his quest for a new contract, he reportedly is expecting to get around $100 to $120 million in free agency.
He's a good player. He's inconsistent, but he's a very good player. And I'll be honest with you, I think he's got leverage here. Because
with the Lakers?
Well, I think he does. I mean, LeBron is now at year 18. Anthony Davis, I think, will have a very good year. He'll train hard in the offseason, but he's got injuries. Dennis is, from what I'm told, can ruffle feathers, not easy to get along with. Because of LeBron's sort of gravitas in the room, LeBron makes it work with him. But in the end, if you told me I had to keep 3 people, it would be Dennis, it would be LeBron, it would be Anthony Davis, and everything else, to me, I would work around. I like KCP. I would love to have him. But if you told me I get 3, that's what I'd want. So I think Schroeder knows that.
Well, there are only so many high-level players to go around.
Right.
The Lakers do have a ton of free agents this year, so this is going to look very different. But I think specifically if you pay attention to what's happening in the playoffs right now, and you do have an injury-prone player in Anthony Davis, and LeBron is getting more and more years stacked on his career, having a bench is very important. So how much money you spend on the top half of your roster, if you don't have a solid bench, when you get later into the season and injuries happen, as we know, and you already have an injury-prone player, at what number are you willing to pay for a player like Dennis Schroeder?
Listen, you don't want to pay him 120. You want to pay him 80. How do I know that? Because Harbaugh's good. But the question now with Wentz is he any good anymore? That feels like pressure to me. That is something to prove. This dude could not hit stuff out in the flat, like was overthrowing screens.
I think Carson Wentz has a lot of pressure on him.
So do
this
I.
season.
Think he has a ton.
I agree, especially the way that the Colts played last year. Like, they were very impressive. So if he comes in and he's not slinging it, and the way that he exited Philadelphia,
A little ugly,
was not pretty. So that adds a little extra pressure too. I do think Matthew Stafford does have some pressure. We've heard a lot about how great he is, and I do think that he is good. I think he is going to be successful here in LA. But he kind of has to be. Like, that was a massive move to move Jared Goff, even though Goff was struggling. He did play in a Super Bowl with them.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough division. I think they do have a little bit of pressure, and I definitely think John Gruden and Derek Carr have a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, no question there.
They might be too.
If it doesn't work this year, they'll probably make a move.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
My buddy Nick right now joining us, Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing, first thing first. I want to talk about that. I haven't talked about this yet. There are times we all have a friend, and you root for the friend, and you think that friend got bad luck. That friend got bad luck. I am there for him. And then 10 years later, you're like, no, most of his crap is self-inflicted. Now, I am not talking about you, Nick, right? Because I haven't known you 10 years. But there are people like that. Milwaukee is one of those stories that I liked for a long time. Giannis from Greece, 60 Minutes piece. Oh, I like that. Ooh, they added Jrue Holiday. I like what they're doing. I've got to the point now I'm rooting against them. Like, I'm over Milwaukee. Kawhi left the East. LeBron leaves the East. Embiid is hurt. They scored 38 points against Atlanta without Trae Young. I watched them last night, and I'm like, their crap is self-inflicted. I am over Milwaukee this morning. Your thoughts?
I'm shell-shocked. It's very interesting. I spent some time this past weekend with the great Joy Taylor here in New York City. And listen, I'm going to reveal some confidences. Joy also not as big of a Giannis fan as the rest of the world is. And I said to her, I was like, Joy, that's a corner. You could be like the first, you'd have to really go far with it, but you could be loudly anti-Giannis. No one's on that corner. This could be the anti-Giannis show. It's an odd day for you to debut this take, Colin, as he's writhing on the ground, holding his knee.
That's true.
Listen, I feel very differently. And I heard the open of your show when Colin's like, oh, I was listening to all these terrible talk shows this morning feeling bad about Giannis. I was like, oh, he's talking about me. I know when he drives in, he's literally talking about my take this morning. Listen, I think Milwaukee has done things the right way. They drafted Giannis when other teams passed on him. They developed him. They invested in his supporting cast. They then this summer did what we always ask teams to do, which is put all their chips in the middle of the table and overpay for a guy they needed in Drew Holiday. They did all of that. They then fought a 7-game war with Brooklyn where they were down 2-0, where they were down 3-2, where they were on the road for a Game 7, and they were right there. And I know they had a bad first half last night, but I thought with the way Giannis was playing in the second half, they were about to win that game, go up 3-1 in the series, and be the favorites to win the title. And then Giannis went down. And he's been an Iron Man. I know he got dinged in the playoffs last year, but he's not Harden, or I'm sorry, he's not Kyrie, who's been hurt a lot. He's not Anthony Davis. He's not Kawhi. And so I feel sick for him. And so I understand your point about the injuries. Some of them were predictable. This one wasn't. And I think Milwaukee was going to win the title. And now, unless somehow Giannis miraculously comes back, they're not going to win the title. They might not even make the finals. So I feel differently than you on this. But this is good. This can be the anti-Giannis show you enjoy. Can ride that boat and see where it goes. I don't want to be a part of it.
Well, listen, I felt bad for the injury, but after the first half, I was just emotionally, I was exhausted from Milwaukee. I was like, no Trae Young. This is what I get. Literally, you have the moment to seize it. You got an hour, and they fall behind by 12, and I just couldn't take it. Okay, so we talk about injuries. And I'm like, okay. I'm kind of over blaming injuries. Even Brooklyn, KD and Kyrie have an injury history, and Harden came into the season to prove a point. I'm not going to work out. Well, as I said earlier, Anthony Davis and Harden came into the season out of shape. In the world's #1 professional league for being in shape, it's like running a marathon without training, getting hurt mile 18 and blaming the marathon. It's like, no, you weren't in shape. Like, I think we are where we are. Atlanta's a little bit of an upstart, but the East is weak. Philadelphia led those games. They couldn't hit free throws late. Philadelphia should have won that series. I think we're making too much of the injuries, and who's left is mostly who should be left.
Well, so I think it's actually a really interesting point. And listen, as I just mentioned, the Giannis injury is to me an outlier one because it was a freak thing and it's a guy who hasn't been hurt. But the point you made, like, is it shocking that Kawhi Leonard is dealing with a lower leg injury? No, he's been dealing with it for 4 years to some capacity. Is it shocking that Anthony Davis got banged up? Of course not. I know Kyrie's injury feels like a freak one, but Kyrie Irving missed the tournament when he was at Duke. His team then didn't qualify for the playoffs until 2015. In 2015, he got hurt in the playoffs. In 2018, he was hurt for the playoffs. In 2020, he was hurt for the playoffs. And then in 2021, he got hurt in the playoffs. That's not shocking. Harden dealt with the hamstring during the regular season. So that's not shocking either. There's no silver lining to this. And they obviously have to take care of business tonight or in Game 7. But there might be some poetic justice in this regard. If the healthiest team left ends up being Phoenix, and it appears that it is, and Chris Paul wins his first and only title, going through the Lakers without AD, and then the Nuggets without Jamal, and then the Clippers without Kawhi, and then potentially the Bucks without Giannis, or I guess maybe the Hawks. Chris Paul, if injuries didn't exist, would already have a title.
Yes.
They'd have won the title in 2018. They might have won it once with the Clippers. So Chris Paul's had bad injury luck throughout his whole career, and now maybe the injuries are finally breaking for them. And lastly, and I think this is an important point you made, I just want to emphasize it, the one team that's here that it's like, wait, how are they here? Atlanta, they have not gotten any injury luck. It's been the opposite. DeAndre Hunter got hurt. Cam Reddish was out. Bogey got hurt. They played the Knicks, who were healthy for the most part. And Philly, aside from Danny Green, Philly was healthy. Philly just melted down.
Right.
So they got to the conference finals without injury luck. Now, obviously, the Giannis thing changes things, but that was in a game Trey was already missing. So Atlanta's not there because of the injuries. They're there because they outplayed the Knicks and the Sixers.
You know, at Barkley yesterday, because I'm older, I remember I heard the Jordan criticism that he couldn't win. And Barkley took exception to all these people saying Paul George gets criticized a lot. And I do think players do face a barrage of criticism that, it used to be if the local columnist ripped you, you'd stop talking to him and you plugged the leak. Now there's coming from all angles, all this criticism. But what do you make of Barkley saying, toughen up, Paul George, everybody gets criticized? And to some degree, it is a badge of honor, right?
So it is a badge of honor, but here's where I disagree with Chuck a bit. Everybody's criticized, right? So Russell Westbrook gets criticized a lot on this show historically. But he's not made fun of. Paul George, it's not that he was criticized. He was being made fun of and mocked. And that feels a little different. Mm-hmm. So I don't think guys mind being criticized. I think human beings don't like being a punchline.
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, like it's people were not saying, oh, it wasn't just like basketball criticism. He was becoming the butt of jokes. And I think that is what made the Paul George stuff stand out a little bit more. And I think Charles, if we talked to him about it, would acknowledge that. Like Paul George had entered into the JaVale McGee category where he was only not level of player, but remember when JaVale on that show was just a constant punchline?
Right.
That's how Paul was being treated throughout social media. And he had multiple, Wilds pointed this out this morning, he had multiple nicknames just making fun of him. Way Off P, Pandemic P, like no one else in the league was dealing with that. So I don't think he was the most criticized player in the league, but I do think he was the most mocked player. And I think that, bothers guys in a different type of way. So I understand what Chuck was saying, but I think it missed the mark a bit. Now he's going to call me one of the jackasses on TV, but that's just is what it is.
By the way, I like the Suns tonight. I think the line is -1 if I was the kind of guy that wagered. And who would you take tonight if you're a betting man?
Oh, I'll take the Suns. I love Chris Paul. I am nervous on his behalf, so I can only imagine how DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker are going to feel tonight. I mean, this is supposed to be the Chris Paul coronation. Game 5 was supposed to be. Now it's Game 6. Everyone, myself included, is like, oh, top 5 point guard of all time. Inarguable. He can't blow a 3-1 lead to a team without Kawhi. Just can't happen. So the Suns have kind of been free rolling. They haven't played any elimination games. They haven't played too many high leverage games. I do want to see for Ayton and Booker if they take on some of the pressure, almost via Chris Paul, because this is a massive moment because they do not want to be in a Game 7 against a team that might be coached by the best coach in the whole league in Ty Lue.
Yeah, Ty is having he's playing chess. Ty is having a great, he is pulling the opposite of Budenholzer. He is pulling strings all night. All right, great seeing you, Nick. Thanks, bud. Nick Wright.
You too. See you guys.
You bet. We are not the anti-Giannis show, but we are. Before the injury, that was the worst half Milwaukee had played all playoffs. In the moment to seize the series.
All I've been hearing about the Bucks for how many years now, they should have squished the Hawks.
That first half should have been, it's our moment.
And that's not a disrespect to the Hawks. But you don't have your best player out there. But the Bucks do. He's a 2-time MVP.
Yeah.
So no, I don't want to see Giannis injured. That sucks. I don't want to see Giannis injured.
Right.
But it's the same thing with the Celtics for years. Kept telling me how the Celtics are championship contenders, and every year I'm like, where are they? So that's my thing. What are you guys gonna do?
Yeah, and that first half last night was, okay, wait a minute. I'm over it now. That was the moment. You gotta at least have a moment. We'll be sympathetic to you But a lot of that went just, I flushed it out at halftime. After that, I'm like, I don't even like watching them.
I love what they did. I love PJ Tucker. I love the Drew Holiday move.
All right. That's great. Get it done in the first half. Against Atlanta without Trae Young. 38 points. Trailed by 12? Bad. All right. Dak Prescott says we are very, very special. There's a very, very special thing happening. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to give you a reason why that's inarguable, why the Cowboys have already canceled themselves out of the Super Bowl. They're already out, and they did it, and I'll tell you why next. After a busy day, the long hot shower, oh, what a relief. You're outside, you're lifting stuff, you're sweating, you come in, you get the hot shower, and the hot water runs out 4 minutes in. Maybe your kid was in it 10 minutes earlier, somebody else used the hot water at home. Doesn't happen with Navien. Navien tankless water heaters. They only heat the water when you need it, so it never runs out. Spa-like comfort. High efficiency. You save money, the planet. You save space, you save energy, and you save big on your water bill because they're high-efficiency tankless water heaters. 15-year limited warranty, too, among the best in the industry. You can save hundreds on local rebates if you contact he or she, your Navien contractor, and upgrade to a Navien tankless water heater. The web address is free and very easy to remember. Just go to tanklessmadesimple.com, tanklessmadesimple.com. Navien.